Luckily, I was expecting to really talk for probably about 25 to 30 minutes. Talking today about blockchain and incentive alignment, and really just going back through some history as kind of an ode to the original cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. I'm wearing that shirt today, and when it comes to blockchain and blockchain networks, what many people don't realize is there's an incentive structure that has to be in place because there's a cost to operate every network. So, what is it going to take for each individual node or operator within a decentralized network to continue to secure that network, verify transactions, reject fraudulent transactions? And it's a lot more complicated than people think. And there's no one size fits all. So when you think about Bitcoin, that's where I always like to start. Bitcoin is the beginning. And when you think about what happened in 2009 was the launch of the Bitcoin network. Satoshi Nakamoto, who's still an anonymous figure, we don't know who he, she, or they is to this day, but a network was launched. And what was happening was a truly decentralized focused network was launched, but it wasn't decentralized to begin with. But it solved a lot of problems. And what Bitcoin allowed us to create is money, or just in essence, just a transfer of value, because that's really all money is. Money has been a medium of many different things over years, from gold to shells to salt to now we think of paper money, to now digital assets, and it was meant to mediate barter. But the problem was, over the last, I don't know, call it many centuries, money has been controlled by governments. And what happens when you put a single entity in control of that much power? It eventually becomes corrupt, and that's what's happened over time. And so Bitcoin was a focus to have a monetary system that was not controlled by one entity, that was not corrupted by government or really anything in power. Let's face it, you can replace those that are in charge of monetary supply over time with people that you think are honest, and eventually that will become corrupt. So creating an incentivized system that gives a network the ability to operate and transfer value and confirm transactions that will not be corrupted. And that's what's happened over time. And that's what Bitcoin gave us. Bitcoin gave us that first concept of that. Now, there were many attempts to create a digital currency prior to Bitcoin, but there was quite a few problems, which was, one, the ability to create a network that was not say immune from attacks, but could withstand any kind of attacks from hackers. Because let's face it, if you can hack a monetary supply, then the reward is great. And then also the ability to prevent what's called double spend. Now, double spend means that if you have a digital asset, think about a picture. I can email the same picture to everybody on this call right now. I can, because it's not unique, it's not simple. I can send it to every single person. But when you're sending money, when you're sending digital cash, for instance, which has a particular value, you don't want the ability to do what's called a double send, which means I can send the same money to two different people at the same time. And in essence, that would duplicate that money supply, because it created new ones as I sent it. And that's what Bitcoin was set out to solve, and to solve a problem from many of the early attempts prior to Bitcoin. And those earlier attempts were important because that led to the creation of Bitcoin, which you see with technology is we continue to build and build on better technology. So whoever Satoshi Nakamoto was, Satoshi was able to take prior attempts and solve some of those problems. And that led to what we see as two main different types of blockchain networks, blockchain infrastructures. And the incentive structure is slightly different, but there's similar concepts in all of them. So the main two are proof of work and proof of stake. Now, you're going to hear a lot of different iterations of proof of work and proof of stake, and people coming up with new terms even today, but those are the main two that you look at. And proof of work means, when you think about the Bitcoin network, all these nodes all over the world, these mining machines are running the Bitcoin network, securing the Bitcoin network, and they're not just verifying transactions, they're competing for that, what's called a block reward. If you notice, Bitcoin has a set release schedule of when Bitcoins are going to be released. Now, there's only going to be 21 million total Bitcoin ever released into circulation, but they weren't all released at once. That's what's happening with every new block creation. And new block in Bitcoin's case is about every 10 minutes or so. And what happens is miners are competing for that block reward of that new Bitcoin that's released onto the network, that set structure, which Bitcoin is set to decrease over time. Initially started out with 50 Bitcoin every new block, and then that got cut in half to 25 after roughly 4 or 5 years. And then it got cut in half again to 12.5, and then it got cut again to 6.25. And we're about to see a halving again next year. But miners are competing for that reward. And so proof of work means they're trying to solve these complex equations to guess a randomly generated number, which is called knots. Now, whichever miner solves that equation, then they're allowed to create the next block and also allowed to claim that block reward of that newly minted Bitcoin. And then you also have fees on the Bitcoin network that are paid back to miners. So that's the incentive structure to secure the network. Now, there's substantial decentralization when it comes to the Bitcoin network, in terms of, if it's not that Bitcoin is immune from attacks, Bitcoin is constantly under attack. Over the years, there's just been numerous attempts to try to corrupt and hack the Bitcoin network. But what happens is the cost to do so, because you have to control more than 51% of the network, and now the cost to do that greatly outweighs any reward that someone would get from attacking that system. So that is why Bitcoin is the way it is today. And I always leave with Bitcoin because that is the first. So there's other proof of work currencies out there as well, proof of work blockchains. In essence, it takes computing power to solve that. Now, some of those proof of work chains, you can use simple computers to mine. Bitcoin started out with simple computers, but as the network grew, the computing power to run the network grew. And now you see these ASIC miners, these large mining machines that are solely focused on mining Bitcoin. Those were created to run the network. Ethereum, up until recently, was proof of work. And when you were able to mine Ethereum using GPUs, graphics cards within computers, a lot of gaming computers were used for that. A lot of GPUs and graphic cards were in demand for that. Now, Ethereum eventually switched to proof of stake, which I'll touch on next. But then also there's other chains to where you can also mine with your computer. And in essence, you're doing that. You're securing the network. You are creating a node, whether you do it standalone or you join what's called a mining pool. That's the incentive structure. Now, that's just one side of it, because what happens when a miner earns those rewards? There has to be substantial demand for that miner and liquidity for that miner to be able to sell what they need to sell to cover their bills, to cover their operations. So it creates an economy because those newly minted Bitcoin are also in demand, and that has created a full economy. Now, there's still a lot more that Bitcoin can have in terms of adoption and use case, but that is what's necessary to create that infrastructure. Now, you look at other blockchain structures, and I mentioned proof of stake. Proof of stake is completely different in terms of how the block rewards are generated. Similar concept. Proof of stake releases a certain amount of coins or tokens every time a new block is created. Proof of stake is seen as a lot more efficient, a lot faster. And I'll just say this before I get into it too much. There's no one size fits all. There's certain things that Bitcoin does that is very important, is going to have many use cases in the future. There's also important things that proof of stake blockchains do that Bitcoin cannot do. That's also going to be important in the future. There's no one size fits all. To say that X blockchain is faster than Bitcoin, so it's better and it's going to be the new Bitcoin. If you ever hear anybody talking about that, they really don't understand how blockchains operate, how these network infrastructures work. And there's no one size fits all. But in proof of stake, instead of running those heavily intensive computers to mine Bitcoin or whatever cryptocurrency is being mined, they put a stake on the network, which is typically a financial investment in that network. You have to many chains that are proof of stake, you have to own or hold a certain amount of that particular coin or token to be able to stake your claim on the network. And at the time you stake it, you also run a node that verifies transactions and helps secure and run the network. And by doing that, you are allowed to earn some of those block rewards. So it's less energy intensive. You don't have to invest in tons and tons of all these different mining equipment. But what happens is, say someone is staking, they put up that stake because if they tried to do anything malicious to that network, to that blockchain network, to corrupt it, to change the infrastructure, they could lose that stake that's put in there. So if they're not being good stewards of the network, they could lose that financial stake. So that financial stake, it's not worth the reward. And again, you would also have to control a majority of the network to be able to take it over. And that's what we're looking for, is decentralized immutable systems. Now, not every blockchain out there is fully is at the same level of decentralization. And I think decentralization is a term that we also should take a second to discuss, because it's not a black or white issue. There's a lot of gray area when it comes to decentralization, mainly because it's a sliding scale. When Satoshi Nakamoto launched the Bitcoin network, it was not fully decentralized at first. First, it was Satoshi Nakamoto was the only person running the Bitcoin network, and then Satoshi got other programmers out there to install the code, download it, and start running it as well. Hal Finney is a very well-known person. That's number two. That was the second person to be running the Bitcoin network. And as he grew over time, the decentralization spread. Same thing when it comes to any new networks that launch. So if you hear a new network, blockchain network that's launching tomorrow, they have to achieve certain substantial amounts of decentralization before it could be on the level of being widely adopted. But it's a sliding scale. Because if I launch a blockchain network tomorrow and 10 of us here are each running a node, that's not very decentralized. The 10 of us control what happens in that network. And if more than half of us get together and decide we want to make a change to the network, we can do that because we have majority control. And so it's important because you can see what's going on. And most of these blockchains that are out there, they're transparent. They're very, you can go to a block explorer, you can see what's happening. You can see what's being created on the network, and you can verify transactions, so you know what's happening. And you can also see the depth of the network, like how many nodes are running it, how many nodes are operating. And so I challenge you can do that. And I'll just I didn't have much of really anything to share as far as a screen share today, but I will show you a resource that I like to use. And there's two different ones. Let me share the screen real quick. Pull this up. CoinGecko and CoinMarketCap.com. Those are two websites that are basically data aggregate sites. They show you what's going on with the market, with all the different cryptocurrencies. You can see kind of what's listed here. But CoinGecko and then also CoinMarketCap as well. They look very similar. They give you a lot of the same information. But either one, when you go through these, they allow you to do certain things. So if I wanted to learn more about the Bitcoin network, I can click on Bitcoin and I can go here, and then you can go to the original Bitcoin.org page. So typically whatever cryptocurrency project you're looking up, CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko will give you the verified website. It's better than if you Google the website, because if you Google the website, sometimes you can get fake, malicious websites that may try to steal your data, steal your money, all those different things. But the other thing that's unique is the Blockchain Explorer. It'll list you links of different websites to where you can view what's happening on that blockchain. So I can go here and I can see what's happening on the Bitcoin network. And you may not understand all of this, but if you want to look up a particular wallet address or your wallet address, you can do that as well. You can see what's happening, how many transactions, how many blocks. And so a lot of these give you a lot of different information to figure out what's going on. So I can scroll down here. I can look at a project, say I want to see what's going on with Aptos. Aptos has been getting a lot of attention lately. I can go to the Aptos website here, where I can learn more about Aptos, but then I can also see different blockchain explorers. And typically a lot of projects will have one or more blockchain explorers to where you can see what's happening with that chain, the transactions. Um, you can see everything that's going on because it's transparent. So those are tools you can use. I would say spend some time on CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko. CoinMarketCap has a great section called Learn and Earn, where you can learn more about certain projects. And if you sign in, create a free account on CoinMarketCap, they'll actually pay you to learn about it. In fact, FIO, the project that I am helping to push forward, has a Learn and Earn section in there as well, to where you can learn more about it. But it's great because you can do your own research and see what's going on. So a lot of networks that are out there that are launching, it's important to understand those infrastructures because I mentioned decentralization being a sliding scale, but there's also a thing, and it's been referred to as the blockchain trilemma. Now, I mentioned this in the earlier part of this presentation, that not all blockchains are created equal, and there's not one size fits all for everything. And so with the blockchain trilemma, there's three factors. What it means is there's three factors that to make a great blockchain, and typically out of the three, only two can really be strong in a network. So it's speed, security, and decentralization. Now, if something is very secure and very decentralized, it's not going to be as fast. Think about the Bitcoin network. Each block takes 10 minutes. Is Bitcoin in its current form going to be something that I'm going to walk into a store tomorrow and pay for some candy or a bag of chips with? Probably not, because I can't wait there 10 minutes for the transaction to clear. Now there's layers being built on top of networks. Like there's a Lightning network being built for Bitcoin. And I know someone may ask about that. And that is one solution, but that is in essence a layer 2 chain being created on top of Bitcoin. It's not as decentralized as Bitcoin. So that's what makes it so fast. And when you think about other like proof of stake chains that are very fast and very secure, they're not heavily decentralized. There's a small number of node providers, and if they're very decentralized and they're fast, they may not be very secure in terms of how those transactions are able to be facilitated. So I see some questions here. I'm gonna get to the questions here in a few minutes. I got a couple more topics. So I mentioned the cost to attack blockchains. I'm going through my outline that I had of topics to talk about today. And the more you can create incentivized structures to have a valid network, you discourage bad actors. People are always going to be out there, and not say everybody, but there's certain people that are always looking to figure out how to beat the system, how to hack the system, how to corrupt the system, and then they can benefit financially. And if you make it too hard for them to do, then they're going to go on and they're going to try to attack other chains, other less decentralized chains. So it's best to understand that. But when you look at, I'll give you examples of these chains. So I mentioned Bitcoin is heavily decentralized, not very fast. FIO, our FIO protocol is a proof of stake system. Proof of stake system has its use case because with FIO, you're not actually transacting the value. FIO helps you use other cryptocurrencies easier. So there's very little financial reward for someone to hack FIO, because the transactions, if I'm sending Bitcoin using the FIO protocol, I'm still sending it on the blockchain, on the Bitcoin blockchain. So that means we're more of a data layer that makes using cryptocurrency easier. So there's not a lot of reward for users to hack into that FIO system. But there's a use case for that. Just like there's a use case for a very fast system to be able to facilitate a transaction. If I walk into a store and I want to pay for an item, I need it to happen quick because there may be a line behind me. It's probably going to be on a proof of stake chain. And proof of stake can achieve sufficient decentralization for what they're designed for. But if I'm going to pay for, say, a piece of real estate, say I want to open up a business somewhere, and I want to buy that piece of real estate with Bitcoin or with cryptocurrency in general, Bitcoin is going to be probably the best, it's definitely the most secure means to use. In fact, there's quite a few realtors I know down in Miami, Florida. And if you know Florida, Miami in particular is a hub in the United States of cryptocurrency adoption. And there's quite a few realtors I know out there that facilitate real estate transactions that have sold quite a bit of properties using Bitcoin. It is very secure. And if the transaction takes 10 minutes to finalize, it doesn't matter, because let's face it, the old way of doing it, a lot of times using the banking system, takes days for that same thing to happen. So everything is relative. There's no one size fits all. But the last thing I want to leave you with before I look to answer some of the questions is, whenever you hear about a new coin or a token that has a use case, and you want to talk about those incentive alignments, there's going to be some out there, even with a noble cause. Like I've seen one recently that was focused on funding, preventing animal abuse and helping with pet adoptions and stuff like that. Or it could be to facilitate a charity. The thing about those coins or tokens, some of them may not have the best intentions, because they may be just playing on people's heartstrings that, oh, I'm going to buy this cryptocurrency. This cryptocurrency is focused on ending world hunger, and that's going to change the world. But what is it really doing? Because if it's just a one side, then you're just really making a donation to it. You're not investing or purchasing a cryptocurrency that has a potential to increase in value down the road, which would increase your buying potential, because there has to be an equal supply and demand. If everybody's buying the token to help, what is that full? You got to look at a project's full economy of how they plan to interact and what's going to be the drivers of supply and demand within that. Because if the only demand to buy the token is everybody's buying it because they think it's going to go up in value and they also think they're helping the world, but there's no long-term play for that currency to be utilized, then what's going to happen is it's going to pump and it's going to dump. And we've seen that happen all too often, because there's not a lot of demand for that token, for that coin or token, in terms of actual use case. The only people buying it are people that are speculating or people wanting to donate to a good cause. But then there's no supply. When you go to sell it or use it somewhere, who's going to accept it? Where's it going to be utilized? So when you look at systems and you look at these projects that launch, and even they may be even tied to a noble cause, evaluate the true economy of that coin or token, because if not, those incentive structures will collapse. And even though they may have the best intention to not be a pump and dump, in essence, we've seen it over the years. That's what it's turned into, because there's no true utilization or use case to create a full economy. If I want to spend my Bitcoin somewhere, there needs to be somewhere else willing to take it. And right now, even though it's not widely adopted where you can walk into every store or location to pay, there's enough demand for it that when I go to sell it, there's liquidity. And it's not just continuing to sell to the people that are buying. Like, there's people that are using it for real world use cases. And so that's why it happens. Now there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of potential in getting into some of these projects early, even before those roadmaps are fully developed, but also know the risk you're getting in, that you could risk to potentially lose everything in that potential of ever how much you put into that particular project. So it's important to do your own research. CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap, that I showed you there, those are great resources. Calls like this, where you hear from different people, get different alignments. If someone is sitting there telling you, buy this because it's going to go up, those are not the people you need to be listening to. If people are pointing towards projects and showing they're using they actually have real world use case, or they have a plan to facilitate adoption, that's what you want to utilize. So let me see some of these questions I can get to. I see Unit Masters has shared one. There's issues of nodes. What are the essential steps or requirement to be a node? So the question of what are the requirements to be a node, every blockchain is different, but some still allow you to participate in staking by delegating your stake to a main node. So I'll give you an example. Tezos, for instance. Tezos is a proof of stake chain to where, now they call it baking, but if you hear baking in Tezos terms, the same thing as staking. That's just their term for it. But when you stake on Tezos, you have to have 8,000 Tezos, which is roughly right around $8,000 worth of Tezos right now to be a node. But you can delegate a stake. So I have Tezos tokens that are sitting in my cold storage wallet that I've delegated the stake to a node, to where they are paying me a portion of those block rewards, and it's earning like 4 or 5% return a year, which is not a lot. But I'm a long-term believer, and that's one of the networks that I've researched and I've been a part of. So that's just an example. I'm not telling you to buy Tezos, but each one has different requirements, and you have to go and look up that chain, look up each one in there, and click on there. Typically there's a developer hub or GitHub or somewhere that's going to give you the data of what is required to be a node. To be a node on ETH, I think you need like 32 ETH right now. I mean, that's roughly almost over $50,000 worth of Ethereum. So not everybody's going to be a node running a node on ETH, but there's certain platforms that allow you to delegate your stake. There's some that are much less. Algorand allows anyone to stake with no minimal requirement. So that's an example. You just have to look into each blockchain is different. And let's see, the next question that Unitmaster shared was, how does validators get the quantity of tokens that is required of them to become a validator? So they typically have to buy it on the market to become a node. So if that's how they get the tokens, is the tokens typically are released onto the market, and they would have to purchase a certain amount, not just holding the tokens, but also being able to establish a node, which requires typically not as heavy of equipment needs as proof of work, but you need to have certain computer equipment and network infrastructure to allow you to facilitate uptime of that network. So there's a lot of requirements. A lot of people asking about those. They're different for every proof of stake system. And as I mentioned before, not all networks are created equally. There's some proof of stake chains that I really like, that they have a great utility and use case. And there's other proof of stake chains that I think are just heavily centralized for what they're being used for, and could lead to some problems. So I see Vikas asked about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is very secure, but the risk of volatility, price volatility is high. That has nothing to do with the network itself. The network of Bitcoin is secure. And in essence, when you look at any new technology, there's a lot of volatility in the early days of adoption. Now, when we talk about monetary supply, it's not like saying the internet. Think about how the internet has come over the last 20 years, 20, 30, 40 years. We're still in the early stages of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So, so when you look at price volatility, that's just in the early stage. Price volatility is something that is a risk of getting in early. You have to have belief, but it doesn't negate how strong and secure the network is, why a lot of people are using it, why a lot of people are facilitating on it. And then the investment piece comes in, and people say that, the it's too volatile, but whenever it does stabilize, the investment opportunity is going to be gone. It's going to be a great asset and tool to use to transact value, but the ability to invest is going to be gone. So that's what you have to look at when you think about Amazon. Amazon in the early days was very volatile. I know somebody that was in the Amazon stock when it was right around $100, and it dropped down to almost $10. They lost 90% of their value of Amazon stock. Now, this was like 2003, I believe, or 2004. And that person panicked and sold everything they have. How do you think they feel about that now that they look back? That was volatility. Amazon was not fully adopted, not fully grown. And everybody wants to have those success stories, but you've got to be willing to take those risks. And you have to understand what those risks are, which is why it's important when it comes to cryptocurrency and blockchain to really study the projects you're looking into, and figure out what does it really do, as far as what is the use case. If it's just another currency that was launched out there, doesn't really have, it's not different. Think about differentiation. What's going to make it different? What's going to make people want to use it? What's going to make that network attractive to people? And that's what's important to understand. And just don't play off the buzzwords, because you see some projects just attach themselves to different buzzwords. Like there was ICOs in 2017, and then we saw DeFi a couple of years ago, and then NFTs, and then now we're starting to see AI. Everybody's attaching their project to artificial intelligence, AI, because it's a buzzword. Are they really doing anything substantial? Are they just attaching their name to it? There was a lot of companies in the early adoption of the internet that attached their name to .coms because they wanted to the internet craze, but a lot of those companies came and went. And the same thing is going to happen here, even though these are not companies, these are projects. Adoption is really the key. So let's see, anything else? Hopefully, let's see. Unit shared a couple other questions. You mentioned Bitcoin is very secure, but then, okay, I already answered that one. Delegating your stake or your Tezos coins. So to clarify on when I talk about Tezos, same thing with FIO. I'm staking my FIO tokens as well. They stay within my own wallet. What you're delegating is the rights to vote and secure the network. So typically, if you stake coins on the network, you have the potential to vote and participate in governance of how that network operates. And so if what I do is I'm delegating that stake to someone that's running a node on the Tezos chain, and then that allows them to earn a yield of the new coins that are coming in, and then they're able to pay those out to those that have delegated a stake to them. It's very easy to do. I've got it in my Ledger wallet, and directly from the Ledger Live app for the Ledger Nano wallet, you can delegate your stake to a block provider. And as far as resources, there's a different resource for each blockchain. So that's why I tell you, go back to CoinMarketCap, CoinGecko, and just look at, and it'll tell you all the details of that chain, whether it's proof of stake, proof of work. And then if you want to go into that, there's it'll link you to more information there. All right, so looking to wrap it up. I know if there's any other questions, the Unit Network team has a way to get in touch with me. So there was a lot of chat here, and it's hard for me to scroll up and look at every question. So if there's something still left unanswered, reach out to them. They know how to reach me, and they can send those questions to myself. If they can't answer them, I can help with those. It seems very complex, but the more you look into it and the more you spend day to day trying to understand it, it's going to get easier. You just have to avoid all the misinformation, all the hype, and know how to do your own research. Because at the end of the day, if you're choosing to participate in a network, run a node, because that's a financial investment, or invest in a coin or token, you want to make sure that you've done your due diligence, because you're responsible for your own decisions, not someone else. And there's nothing in this world that has zero risk. So even good projects can fail. Even good projects that may have everything in line could potentially fail. And so there's no guarantees, and that's why you want to mitigate your risk. But when you understand the risk you're taking, you can make better decisions.
Wow. Thank you so much, Wayne. And that was an amazing presentation. And just one last question before we close. Do you have any reference materials that you would recommend to our students?
Any reference materials? Mainly, so the two that I put in here, CoinMarketCap, CoinGecko, are great to start looking at, looking for information. Also, if you go to CoinDesk.com, CoinDesk is a media news site, and CoinDesk has a lot of information about. There's a 101 section that allows you to learn a lot as well. There's a lot of people out there giving you a lot of information. The biggest thing is, like I said, learn how to evaluate that information to see where it's coming from. If somebody's telling you to invest in a certain thing to get a set root amount back or whatever, I would definitely question that. But those learning resources in CoinDesk and CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko, notice a lot of them start with coin. That's where I would start. There's a project that I helped develop a lot of their educational materials called newscrypto.io. It's NEWS crypto, newscrypto.io. They have some free educational resources in there. They also have some staking information in there that links to a great staking site to show people information about staking. But you can check out their stuff. I helped them build a lot of the educational resources. Not affiliated with them anymore. We did some great work together, left on good terms. So I still recommend people go there, because it's another tool or resource to get some free information and understanding more about crypto.
All right, thank you so much for that. And thank you for that amazing presentation. And I also want to thank every one of you for staying till the end of this session. And we look forward to seeing you some other time, Wayne. Yeah. And I also look forward to seeing every one of you in tomorrow's workshop session. So I wish everyone a great day and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, Wayne.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. Have a great day.
You too.